Hey guys, it's Mathel here once again with the next build, maybe one of the last builds of the league. That is an Ethereal Knives Inquisitor. I did play Ethereal Knives last league once to mess around with Impale, and it was a pretty funky build, and it was a very good build in the end. Some things have changed, but more notably there is a Nimis ring, which lets you shoot all your projectiles randomly in a circle, and then they come back to you. Now, that was a very powerful, very popular ring that was introduced last league that I chose to not use because it was basically way too good, and at this point it did get, I don't know, not really nerfed, changed a bit, and it still works very well with lots of builds. It was one divine at the time of me making this character because people aren't really too interested in it anymore. Maybe a few builds got nerfed for it, but more importantly there's Vengeance Cascade, which does a very similar thing, but only for attacks. So Vengeance Cascade is purely for all the bow and wander builds and shit like that out there, various other attack projectile builds, but Nimis still works for spells. So I gave it a shot and made Ethereal Knives with Nimis. As you can see, it shoots in a circle, but it also comes back to you regardless of your proj speed. I was told multiple times that you needed a certain amount of proj speed for Ethereal Knives to come back to you or some shit like that with Nimis. Tested it out, and yeah, that's just not the case. You will have the projectiles come back and double hit the enemy regardless of proj speed. So that made building around it pretty comfortable, and I went ahead and built a Nimis with an Inquisitor, just a bunch of Fizz to LE conversion, nothing too fancy in the build to be honest, but I'm also trying to incorporate Blade Blast as a secondary damage source from the Ethereal Knives leftover daggers, since it's actually possible with this. So Blade Blast interacts with Blade Fall, Blade Vortex, and Ethereal Knives, and it's only actually good or usable with Blade Fall, but with this interaction it is very viable to do with Ethereal Knives as well. Since conventionally your Ethereal Knives, when you attack, you just shoot out in like sort of a splayed conal pattern, and then some knives get stuck in the ground, some hit a wall or some shit. Essentially you never really get to use Blade Blast in any good way. With this one, all the blades come back to you, and if you can justify standing around for a bit collecting up some blades, you can press Blade Blast and get a big payload of damage, and that's kind of how I've tried to build the character here. It's kind of still a secondary because it is only really necessary when I am not completely one-shotting things with Ethereal Knives, but Ethereal Knives is pretty fucking strong at the moment, and yeah, I'm just running around one-shotting most things, even bosses, and it will only realistically help me on endgame bosses and stuff like that that don't get completely one-shot, or if you've got a weaker character and can afford to stand around and gather up some blades. But the interaction is pretty good and actually workable. It could probably be really good with a cast on crit setup character if you did like a Cyclone, cast on crit, Nimis, Ethereal Knives, Blade Blast, similar to how I've played in the past with Blade Vortex, Blade Fall. I think that could be pretty strong, but I'm sticking to being a pure self-cast character, and yeah, it's pretty obvious to see why a lot of people go with a EK build for some top tier zoomage, because it's powerful stuff. It AoE's real nice. If you get more proj speed, you can cover up, you know, the screen or even further. I did try a bit more proj speed, didn't really like it too much for the return mechanic. For Blade Blast, it felt like some of the blades were like getting stuck somewhere else, but either way, does work out. And then it's just got really good scaling to actually do proper big DPS. So this isn't going to be too special of a character, but I am putting it together to at least take on some Ubers and stuff. I do think EK has a huge ceiling and very playable skill, especially with Nimis out there, especially with Nimis being as cheap as it is. One divine compared to what it was last league, which is like 40 or 50 divines or some shit, is very tempting. And yeah, if the market and people have decided it's not that powerful or not that expensive or rare, fuck it, let's all play with it. So with that, just a couple little boss tests here. I've yet to actually do any proper endgame. We'll tackle that very soon. But with that, let me go ahead and show you how I've built the character thus far. So as a character level 92 Inquisitor, no, Vengeance Cascade doesn't work for spells. You constantly get people saying, oh, what about Vengeance Cascade with Frostbolt or, EK? It's 4 attacks. The Anoint is 4 attacks. For spells, you must use a Nimis, which does complicate things in some cases. Projectiles are fired in random directions, which means you need a lot of projectiles or a lot of cast or attack speed to proper utilize it, but then they return to you. So as I stated, it doesn't require a certain approach speed. You cast and then things come back. It's going to depend on like elevation sometimes and what the map is doing stuff, but you should see that there's blades stacking up, and then once you use Blade Blast, it will trigger all of those. And in most cases, it does seem to be that if it's a flat enough surface, it's just going to return into a central point, and then you can use Blade Blast, which in my case, I'm using as like a pseudo 6-link. So we've seen these hats before. It's Blade Blast in a hat that has hypothermia, and then either Fizz as lightning, which is from the Insanity essence, I think, or 30% more LE damage, which is a horror essence, and then that makes it basically a 6-link. You just use an essence until you get a hypothermia, and then you can lock suffixes and unveil for +2 AoE, or you can unveil +2 proj and put your EK setup up here instead. So you got like a, decent chance of getting one of those two just from extra skills levels, and then swap setups around, because the current Ethereal Knife setup is anomalous just for a couple of extra projectiles. I don't really need them that much, but the default is extra proj speed, and I felt like that wasn't good for this setup for some reason. I'm then using crit damage, crit strikes, awakened added fire for the +1 and also for the extra fire damage, and then spell echo. We've also got pinpoint, so that once I'm actually stacking up intensify, it's going to do a lot more damage. I only just added pinpoint to the build, so I think, only like this level, something like that. Whereas the Blade Blast is Blade Blast, LE Focus, since it doesn't matter whether or not it's doing any ailments. Most of the ailments are coming from EK. Intensify as well, and crit damage. I did think that Intensify would work in that you just get stacks of your Intensify and then it would apply to both, but instead you have to actually stack up Intensify with Blade Blast, so that's going to make some things a bit awkward. Like if I can just stand here and face tank a boss, right, and stack up my Intensify and then do it, that's pretty cool and it's going to work, but a lot of the time that's just not the case, and stacking up Intensify is going to be tough with Blade Blast, so I'm not sure I'm going to keep it. And on top of that, it does reduce your area, and that makes the overlap of the actual Blade Blast a bit tougher, even when you're really stacking them up on a boss. So Intensify and Blade Blast may not hang around, but for now it's sitting there, and we'll see how it goes. Other than that, we have built it kind of just like a regular Inquisitor. Bit of life, bit of energy shield with Mind Over Matter and EB. So Mind Over Matter, Eldritch Battery, mana is fixed that way entirely. It's a pretty costly spell, especially once you're casting at a high enough rate. We are using the Inquisitor Ascendancies so that you fix your regen and ES regen, of course the ignoring enemy res, and other than that, some regen. We're getting randomly picked up a Delve ring that has a bit of conversion. It's currently not doing anything, but it can free up the conversion on these gloves. So you need conversion somewhere to care about elemental damage instead of physical. In this case, I got 34 on gloves, which is a pair of gloves I crafted just by grabbing a Fractured Life and then Veil Orbing until I got one other good suffix, and then unveiling something that I wanted, which was either going to be the focus, the additional proj, or the conversion. Since we got the conversion, I then multi-modded and finished it off like this. Since my focus now gives me double damage and all that extra cast speed, I've got double damage focus there, double damage focus there, and now cast speed there. So we get conversion there. We also get conversion from this mastery. So with that, that's 74 at the moment, right? And then the implicit wand gives another 15. So I basically just smashed a few wands together, like only a couple, and this is the best thing I could get. So I got conversion there, 22 more cast speed, a little bit of speed, and then haste, a little bit of speed as well. I was going for initially ethereal knives require 1 fewer projectile fired to leave each lingering blade, which means EK per amount of approach fired leaves a blade. So ideally, if I had both of those, basically every time I'd fire, I'd leave a lot of blades behind. But it seems to be the case that even just with that one thing, we leave plenty of blades, and I just kept it on the shield and didn't bother chasing it down on my weapon as well. So my shield's nothing too special on the tree, but a bit of extra life and the EK thing. My wand's nothing too special either, but a little bit of extra speed and some conversion was convenient, so I left it at that. I made this wand with essence spam, I think. Caster essence spam. Yeah, something like that, until I got like +1 fizz with something else on it, and then just tried to target, clean it up to multi-mod it in this sort of capacity. And then the shield, fractured spell, used, I don't know, life essences, I believe, until I got +1 fizz, cleaned it up on the suffixes, once again unveiled with the locked prefix. Nimis, of course. Costs like a divine, very nice item to put on at level 48, as long as you can make it work for you. And then amulet that's got a bunch of stats, fizz and cold, fizz lightning, costs like a divine, maybe less, don't remember. Otherwise, just one roll with a +1 to fizz is pretty damn good, or even a +1 to fizz with like crit multi and then just a nicer amulet. It's going to be about the same yield as this one. And then boots just do some life regen, some resists, and yeah, that's about it for now. We do have a lethal pride over here that I searched up just for as much double damage as possible. That's double damage, nothing. Double damage, bit of strength, and then double damage and double damage. I think I already looked at that one. Double damage. So I think it's got 20 in total if you utilize it enough. And this one was like a divine that I paid for maybe 3 weeks ago that I didn't use. And then we have a Forbidden Flesh in the form of Harmony of Purpose. It's stealing from the Guardian, which is just keeping up all of my charges. So it keeps up power, endurance, and frenzy charges. Very autopilot-y, and that's just a bit of quality of life and smoothness for the character. They were like 200C and 70C, something like that. I seem to remember them being very expensive, and I've never used them because of that, but now they're pretty damn cheap and available, so decided to give them a shot, and it does feel pretty good having maximum charges all of the time. The tree itself does have minion nodes at the moment, so you can take advantage of this and a bit of this, but I might unspec them to do some other shit. Otherwise, we do have glancing block, glancing blows for block, capped out almost the attack block and the spell block with that. So it's just glancing block, but with the life pool I've got, with the regen I've got, with the freeze that I have, it actually feels really tanky and sustainable compared to plenty of other builds I've played this league that have built heavier into tank. But it cannot be understated how good freeze is for Crucible. So this shit basically freezes everything in Crucible, and then you just need to be able to take a hit or two every now and again, and you become pretty damn thick. So this character freezes very well, and it becomes pretty damn good for Crucible. Yeah, aside from that, nothing else really going on, just some cold nodes and stuff, and that is the build. Aura's a Hatred, Zealotry, got Tempest Shield. As well as that, I have haste on a Divine Blessing that I'm pressing pretty much all of the time. Gives us a lot of extra speed because I'm stacking some aura effect, and it is pretty worth it. I do have Righteous Fire in case I want to go just a bit more on damage, and it does regen well enough, but I've yet to actually need Righteous Fire, so we'll see when I actually get to press it, because this is going to be a bit of a face tank build, and that takes us to another level of damage, but also another level of hurt. So we'll see how that goes. And then, yeah, this quite likely has a good chance of becoming Build of the League just because of how powerful it should be in the end. We'll see how it is in the next couple levels, but I got high hopes for this. EK is a very powerful spell, and Blade Blast hopefully makes it even better. So thank you very much for watching, and see you guys next time.